very much. I will warn you, if that music continues, I am tempted to break out into a rap. It'll make it easier for me and you. There'll be no twerking, but I may just do that. We'll see how we go. So thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. I want to be at any event where the theme is solidarity, and I'd like to change my business card. Actually, my business card currently reads Donna Mulhearn, Pilgrim and Storyteller. I thought that was pretty cool, but I'd like to add now Solidarity Volunteer. I hope you don't mind if I pitch that. But what a role to play in our lives as human beings. What more could we be than that? To be who we are called to be, and that is fully human, and in our natural state as human beings is to show love and compassion to others and be in solidarity. If we are not doing that, we have been knocked out of our natural state. And there are many corporations and people and institutions on the planet who would like us to be in that state where we are not engaged. And so to be in solidarity with our human brothers and sisters is an act of resistance, and it's revolutionary. So good on you guys for having that as part of your mandate and your mission. I was asked once when I spoke back in 2003, after I'd come back from the war in Iraq. So think back 2003, for those of you my age and older, that'll be easy. For those, there's quite a few young faces in the room, but it's 10 years ago, so imagine where you were 10 years ago. When I came back, I was doing a talk at a school, Waverley College in Randwick, and I did my talk about the war and the situation and what I witnessed, etc. And this boy put his hand up at the end, a 16-year-old boy. They usually asked me about the tanks and the guns and all of this, but this boy put up his hand and he said, Miss, why did you go? And I gave the usual answer that I was used to giving. He went, no, really, why did you go? And I thought, well, thank you for that invitation from a 16-year-old boy, no less, to go deeper and to share what was really the most important part of my journey, and that was the inner journey. Because what we do, our physical acts, are one thing and can appear to be, in some people's minds who observe us, dramatic or adventurous or risky, but of course they are motivated by something from within us. And so I might share just a little bit of that today. But what I will say is that my journey, the last 10 years of non-violence, didn't begin in Baghdad. It began in a little Irish nunnery on the top of a hill in a town in Ireland named Cove, which is near Cork. And on the top of the hill is a Benedictine monastery where I went, ended up, which is a lovely story how I ended up there, in my late 20s, and lived in with 8 elderly contemplative nuns, and that was the beginning of my journey to the places I've been, to the war zones and the other places I've been in the last 10 years, and hopefully that will make sense to you in a little while as to why I feel that was the beginning of a journey. So I just want to share a bit of the context of, a lot of people ask me, so how does a girl end up in Baghdad as a human shield? You know, how does that come about? Do you see a brochure or an advertisement or something like that? Kentucky tool? Palms encounter. For me, I'll just ask you to go back again to that time in 2003. January 2003, it was a hot summer, I should say. Australia was beating England in the cricket, and the talk of the war in Iraq was starting to brew. It was all over the place. You would hear the talkback radio commentators giving their view, then you would have others giving an alternative view, and the politicians would go either way depending on who they wanted to please and how they felt the electorate was going. And the rest of us were anxious and worried. Some of you may have gone out and joined the demonstrations held, well, all over the world, really, not just Australia, all over the world. Millions and millions of people who went out to say, well, we don't believe this is right, it's a bit dodgy, a bit old-fashioned, but we prefer international law, etc., etc. and we fear for the safety of our brothers and sisters in Iraq. And so that's certainly where I was. And I'd spent the last 12 months in a place where I was exploring more deeply the teaching, the very radical teaching of non-violence. And I mean, it's a teaching that's so radical that for 2,000 years the church has not been able to follow it. And look, you know, you can understand, and when I talk to students, mostly year 10s, and I tell them our teaching, you should see the reaction. I'll say, well, our teaching is love your enemy. Love your enemy, do good to those who hate you. I remember one girl in year 10 went, yeah, right, out loud. Yeah, right, you've got to be kidding. Don't be ridiculous, love your enemy, yeah, for heaven's sake. I don't even like them, or I don't know them, don't understand them, they threaten me, whatever, there's a reason they're my enemy. This is our teaching, and this is our tradition, and we are the keepers of this tradition. And so, back in 2002, when I was going deeper into this teaching and realising the implications of it were so profound. You know, when Jesus said love your enemies, I think he meant don't kill them. Sounds pretty basic, doesn't it? Almost too basic to say that statement, but look at the situation we're in today with wars led by Christian nations. And so at the time and still do, pray every day the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. And aren't we just loving what's going on at the moment with Pope Francis? He was in Assisi this week, and happy St. Francis feast day to those who have devotion to St. Francis this week it was. And so I turn on the news and there's Pope Francis in Assisi, and he made a comment that he would like to bring the church back to live in the way that Francis and his followers lived. And I almost fell off my chair in my lounge room because I thought, oh boy, you're going to be in trouble. How are you meant to do that? Anyone who attempts to live that well, you'll lose your job or get killed, one or the other. But that's what happens. And so good on Pope Francis for aspiring to such an ideal. And so I pray each day the prayer inspired by St. Francis, the peace prayer, which many of you will know. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is error, truth. Where there is discord, unity, and so it goes. And again, when I talk to schools, I say to the students, pray the prayer of St. Francis if you dare. I dare you to. Because if you pray that prayer, it's such a radical piece of writing. If you pray it sincerely, then it will be honoured. And then you don't know where you're going to end up. Because what you're saying is, where it's dark, pick me. I'll go and try to bring light. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is sadness, may I bring joy. Amazing, radical, a prayer of solidarity, if there ever was one. And so back in 2003, early 2003, I'm praying the prayer of St. Francis, and inside I'm having this internal dialogue with St. Francis. So I go, well, all right, St. Francis, it's okay for you back there in 13th century Italy. You didn't have George Bush to deal with, or Osama bin Laden, suicide bombers, chemical weapons, etc., etc. What's a girl to do? A girl in Sydney. And then I heard on the radio, this guy's name was Ken O'Keefe, a former US Marine. Now he had an idea. He said, look, it seems okay for our governments and our media to support this invasion of Iraq because they talk about the people who live there as if they are somehow different to us, the other. They are Arabs, in inverted commas, as if that was a bad thing. And Muslims, in inverted commas, as if that was even worse. And their names were Rihad, Ahmed, Yusuf. Not like us. Different. The other. So it seems like, hey, you know, a few thousand of them are killed in the press. Well, you know. And so it went. Ken's idea was this. He said, all right, so what would happen if we went there too? Us. White people. You know, Western educated, wealthy. And our names were Donna and Karen and John and Peter and Jeff. Because if one of us were killed, not only would it make the news, it would be the front page. If I was killed in Iraq, you would have known my name, you would have known my mother's name, you would have known everything about me. Because my death would have been mourned and grieved. And so Ken's idea was, well, let's go there too and stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Iraq. And if something happens to us, it will draw attention to what's happening to the Iraqi people. He said we could be human shields. We could use this white privilege that we possess in a powerful way. We could protect humanitarian sites from bombing, water treatment plants, power stations. We could live on those sites, write to George Bush and the Pentagon and say, we're the human shields, we are from all these different countries, and if you bomb this site, you will kill us. And then he said, who's coming? Quite an invitation for a Saturday afternoon. Who's coming? And so a lot of people say to me, Donna, it must have taken you a long time to decide to be a human shield in Iraq, tossing and turning at night, arguing with your mother. I say, are you kidding? 1 second. My hands were shaking as Ken was talking. My heart was pounding. You know the feeling when you get a call. And 1 second I knew that I had to go. Because this was a chance for me, it wasn't just an answer to my prayer, it was a chance for me to live the prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. I could sense St. Francis smiling. It was perfect. A non-violent expression, consistent with my tradition. And so 2 weeks after hearing that call on the radio, I was in Baghdad. And then my next question was, what do you pack to go to Baghdad? What did we know about Iraq back then? And here I was, a relatively well-informed, educated person, and I thought, okay, Iraq, okay, so there have been lots of wars. Saddam Hussein, well, everything, everything was about Saddam Hussein. It was almost like he was the only one who lived there. This one-dimensional view. The place was defined by him and his oppression. What little did we know about the place? So I thought, made all these assumptions and stereotypes, as we do. And again, I say to the students, question your stereotypes. Because not only, when I went to Iraq, not only did I realise that my stereotypes about Iraq and Iraqis were not true, but to realise that the opposite was the case really shook me up. So I'm just going to tell one story about that in my time in Iraq. It was on the first day, and so I was feeling a little bit nervous. Stay with me. You can hear I'm not going to rap, but the feeling I had on the way to Iraq was one of a little bit of anxiety, not just because I didn't know what was about to happen. Not only did I not know whether I was going to return alive, all of those heavy things. There was something else bothering me, and that was, well, what are the Iraqis going to think about me, an Australian girl, considering my country, who they called President Howard, remember him? John Howard? He had just put up his hand to be part of what they called the Coalition of the Willing, Deputy Sheriff no less, to be part of this invasion of Iraq. So here I am, a girl coming from the country in the Coalition of the Willing, and my country's about to invade theirs, and this could be awkward. What's going to happen? What are they going to say to me? Like, they would have a right to stop me, challenge me, dress me down. It's, they have a right to do that. So here, I'm pretty nervous and about being Australian and what that meant for me on the streets of Baghdad. And I soon found out. Walking down the street on the first day was with some other Human Shields. By the way, the Human Shield movement, for others who heard the same call that I did, there was about 800 people from all over the world. We were aged from 18 to 85, and we were from all walks of life and backgrounds. At our meetings, we had to translate into 5 different languages, and so that was another story. And we protected 5 sites from aerial bombing. I was walking down the street on the first day with some of the other Human Shields in the group, and we were stopped by some Iraqi men. And they're big guys, really, really big Iraqi men. We stopped, and I thought, oh, hopefully, they'll just give a greeting, we'll move on. I wasn't ready to see what was going to happen. And so, they stopped us and they said, oh, hello there, welcome in Baghdad, as they did. So tell us, what's your names and where are you from? Oh boy, okay, my stomach by this time was churning, and I looked at the other Human Shields, the group I was with, and down the end of the line, there was about 6 of us out for a walk. Down the end of the line were Human Shields from Europe, France and Germany. And I thought, well, it's all right for them, because their leaders were opposing the war. They were going to be the heroes, they would get the accolades, etc. They'd be okay. So I looked at the line and I thought to myself, you know what, Donna, I reckon you've got about 30 seconds to conjure up the best New Zealand accent I can find. I've got to pretend I'm a Kiwi. And New Zealand's not involved, and see if I can get away with that. But what do you do to be a New Zealand accent without using the word six or sex or something? What do you do? And so I'm hopeless at accents. And so before I knew it, there was a big Iraqi man looking at me intently. Miss, what's your name? Where are you from? Took a deep breath. My name is Donna. I'm from Australia. Australia? He said at the top of his... Oh, he said, you're from Australia? Well, yes, I'm sorry, yes. He went, Australia? Really? Australia? He thought that was so interesting. He said to his friends, did you hear that? Australia. He saw some friends across the road. Oi. Well, he didn't say oi. Yalla habibis, yalla. Australia's here. And so he got a crowd around. I thought, great. Public humiliation. Right. He wants to do this in public. So he gathers his friends around, and finally he looks back at me, and he grabs my hand so tight, and he shakes it so tight, and then he says, you know what? I went, what? He said, we love Australia. I went, really? Why? He said, well, we know what Australia's like. We know what Australians are like. He said, you know what? You're such nice people. You're so friendly and you're so funny. I went, oh, you know what? You're right about that. You got that right. He said, you know, you're so funny, you've got the best sense of humour in the world. He said, you know, we know because we watch all your best movies, you know, your funny movies, you know, like Crocodile Dundee. Yeah. He said, we know. He said, the reason why we like that so much, your sense of humour and your friendliness, is because we're like that too. That's what we're like, Iraqis. And so we have that in common. Is this? I don't know what's happening now. Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening now. And the other thing he said, the other reason we love Australia, he said, is sport. He said, every sport in the world, Australia's just fantastic at sport. And now, remember this is 2003, so forget the last couple of Olympics, okay? So 2003. And he said, you best at everything, because Iraqis are sport mad. And they said, you're best at all sports, oh, except for one, we're better. Now, I don't know if anybody can guess. Exactly, soccer. They've got a great football team, as they call it, and which we do play in the World Cup qualifiers, and so they're pretty proud of that. And so there it was. I had nothing to worry about because my country, Australia, is considered very funny, friendly people and good at sport, and I was on top of the world, and I was the popular one. It was great. And then standing next to me was Faith, and Faith was a 75-year-old American woman. And just quietly, no offence to Americans, but I didn't know that she would have the same claims, you know. And so they look at Faith, what's your name? She said, my name is Faith and I'm from America. Oh, you're from America? She said, yes, I've come from America. You've come here from America? But hang on a minute, but the ships are in the Gulf, the jet fighter planes are already flying over, American ones, did you know? Yeah, and your president, Mr. Bush, he says this about us, he says that about us. Hang on a minute, they said. Does he know you're here? Did you tell him you were coming? Remember, you're in Iraq, you don't question your president. And so it's a context of which they made that comment. So Faith looked back and she said, you know what? I don't care what Mr. Bush says, I've just come here to be with you, my friends in Iraq. And they took Faith's hand ever so gently. And they said, you, Mrs. Faith, you are our most honoured guest. She'd knocked me off my perch. But then what we were able to do was rise above the politics and connect with each other as human beings, which may well be a good definition for solidarity. And then the other issue we had to deal with, of course, was, and those of you who've been to the Middle East, to the Arab world, was the hospitality. And so we're invited not just to drink a cup of tea, but to drink many cups of tea and lots of biscuits and cakes. So we weren't so much afraid of the bombs as too much cake at one point. When you're invited for dinner at a place or lunch, you're there for hours, you've got the photo albums out, the kids are on your lap, the questions, the most common questions I got was, how's your mother? Is she okay? She must be worried. First question. Second question, are you married? Is it? No? Okay. I have 5 cousins down the road. I'll bring them up to meet you. Lots of matchmaking going on. We used to call hospitality in Iraq hostage fatality. Because when you went out, you just didn't know when you were going to make it home. And I always wanted, at the time when I was there, I wished that Alexander Downer and John Howard could come to Baghdad for one day and drink tea with these people. Because the moral to that story is, know your enemy. Know your enemy before you bomb them. Know your enemy before you invade their country or turn them away, seeking asylum or whatever. Because what you'll realise when you know them is that they are more like you, more like us than we ever imagined. And we have so much more in common. And so as the days went by, we were together, sharing our dreams and our fears and talk of more corny Australian movies. And I got to experience the Iraqi culture for what it was, not what I thought it was, and that is a very sophisticated, cosmopolitan, multi-religious, multicultural, highly cultured people. At one stage, Iraq had the highest rates of master's degrees and PhD in the country. High appreciation of the arts. There was poetry readings by the River Tigris, the National Theatre in the centre of town doing Shakespeare, and big sculptures all around Baghdad with depicting tales from the 1001 Nights. A place of great sophistication, very secular. The women looking the same as what we would, well, to be honest actually, a little bit more glamorous than us, the Iraqi women. Very beautiful, savvy, sexy, glamorous, gorgeous. And the men too. No, you know, the men would frequent the beauty parlours on every second corner in Baghdad as much as the women to get themselves preened and plucked. A beautiful culture who were proud of who they were. And now, everything I've just said, now, forget it. It's all gone. None of what I just said exists now. So Iraq is no longer a secular country. It's now run by Islamic fundamentalists. Women are not free to live and work as they could. There are no longer the theatre, the poetry, etc. That you would see in the secular society. Culture is no longer valued. Everything that I just described no longer exists. It has been dismantled and destroyed. That's another story. I just want to share a little bit to finish about the feeling that we had and how I related it to solidarity. So this was probably about 2 weeks into the bombing of Baghdad. Remember, they called it shock and awe. It certainly was shocking and awful. I was doing interviews with Australian TV a lot. They would ring constantly during the night, which was okay because we weren't sleeping anyway because the bombs were dropping all night. I described to one particular journalist what it was like. And then she said to me, she said, now you're stuck in a war zone. You must regret going there. And I said, no. I got this question often. I said, their answer is no, because every day I feel how my presence here is valuable, bearing witness, reporting back, telling stories. It's a privilege for me to be able to tell Iraqis that they have support from millions of people around the world who don't want to see them suffer. We give them this support and they give us back care and generosity. And we give to each other love and acceptance. We go with each other to a place far beyond politics. It's living, breathing solidarity. Solidarity between ordinary people of warring nations. It is something I'll remember always. Here, under the threat of death, it makes me feel alive. Of course it does, because that's what I was meant to do. And that's what we're all meant to do, is be living in this way of being who we really are. Who are we really? And I'm going to go back now to the connection of the nunnery in Ireland. And what happened to me there was a transformation where I realised and came alive to the contemplative dimension of my faith and my tradition. And what happens when you go into silence, where you slow down, turn off all the noises, is know who you are and realise first who you are, not a consumer, a daughter, a wife, a teacher, a profession, a voter, all those constructs and layers on top of us. But first you know who you are. John May, my teacher, says in meditation you know who you are because you are who you are. And who are we? Fully human. First human being. And when you feel that humanness, and for me, probably the first time in 28 years I'd felt it so richly, you become more aware, as you become aware of your own humanity, of the humanity of others. Every other person, no matter what country they're from, what their name is, what their religion is, and even the natural world around us, we become and feel more connected to. And so when you feel this connection, you feel it in your gut with your fellow human beings, it makes it impossible then to, say, bomb their countries or turn them away or neglect their needs or don't respond when their human rights are being violated. It makes it impossible because you're feeling this connection with your humanity to theirs. And as I said before, this way of living is not, doesn't suit some situations, corporations, whatever, who actually want us to live a different way, who want us to be, sometimes I feel the Australian community is asleep. It's just like numb to what's going on in the world. And I love the word vigil, and I love that the peace movement has taken on the word vigil when they talk about a peace vigil. The word vigil means to stay awake and to be awake. And so I love that. Being alert and vigiling and being awake is a way that we can honour our fellow human beings in other countries. You know what, I was thinking of the word solidarity, and I'm a former, I guess, part of the Labor movement. I'm one of those people you meet who say that I'm a former member of the Labor Party. I think it's like a new demographic. A lot of people who are former members of the Labor Party, there's so many of them around. And so I've been to many a meeting where late at night the trade unionists come out singing "Solidarity Forever," and that was part of it for me. And so we think of the word solidarity as if, I always thought of it as kind of a tough word. It's almost aggressive, the way that sometimes you'd seen it used in the context that I'm talking about amongst the trade union movement. You're almost demanding something. It reminds me of the type of different types of activism there is. I remember when I was in my teens and early 20s, I was a political activist then, very much an ideological activist, and I was an angry one. I had a chip on my shoulder and I believed this, and if you didn't, you're in trouble, and that's not really helpful for anyone. So when your activism comes not from a place of politics but from a place of love, then it's obviously a completely different type of activism. And now I see solidarity as not that's something that we would akin just to the trade unions or just to putting our hands in fists in the air, but really solidarity is just love, really love in action. So I'm very grateful and commend you guys at Palms for taking that on in a very real and meaningful way. And living that for us as an example. So congratulations and thank you for having me here.